All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Alicia Lord. I am with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. As your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to just discuss a few features of the WebEx webinar platform, and I'm going to provide a few announcements before we begin. So you should see a poll coming up just to the right side of the WebEx screen asking you to rate your current knowledge of the topic. My colleague William will be bringing that up shortly. So please take a moment to answer that as we go through some housekeeping items. Please note that this event is being recorded. Our webinar will be linked to OJJDP's YouTube page and posted to the OJJDP Multimedia page. So all of our past webinars are archived on the YouTube page and the multimedia page. And for transcript and support materials, you can contact the OJJDP help desk at the email on the screen. If you do have any trouble uploading the event materials today, you can contact the help desk. And my colleague William will also be sharing a Google Drive link in the chat that will allow you to download the presentation, as well as some supplementary handouts for today's event. For optimal audio, you also have an option to dial out through the WebEx platform to your phone line. Please feel free to use the chat feature to enter in any questions and select all panelists before hitting send. Please note that we will have a Q&A session following today's event, as well as following the series, in which you will have access to all of our lovely panelists for the series and be able to share any questions you will have. So we're keeping track of your questions. We may get to a few today, we may not, but you will have time for follow-up following this session. All right. For those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a moment and help us count. If you're viewing by yourself, there's no need to type anything at this time, but if you are viewing in a group, please go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. Attendees signed in will receive a feedback email with a certificate of attendance. These come back automatically from WebEx, so please keep an eye on your email and remember to check your spam folder as it is an automated email, so it can get caught in the spam. All right, this is the general layout of our webinar event today. And again, thank you for joining us for the presentation. I will now turn it over to Gabby to introduce our speakers.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Alicia, for introducing us and for taking care of us as usual. My name is Gabriella McGallen. Gabby McGallen is just fine. I'm the program manager for the Innocent Justice Foundation. I'm so happy to be here with you today for the third part of our trauma series. For those of you who missed the first couple, those are recorded and available through ANTAC already, so feel free to go ahead and watch those to kind of get you up to speed. But during our initial slides, we will try to do a recap of all the information that you might have missed as far as what vicarious trauma is, how it may affect you, when to say when, and all the important pieces. And then we'll dive into specifically talk about any of the cognitive side and symptoms you might be experiencing. And we'll give you some very helpful tools and tricks and tips to combat those symptoms. We know that all that you do is extremely hard and also extremely important. So we really want you to come out of here with some good suggestions, with some good self-care tips. We are funded by OJJDP, which allows us to be here with you today in partnership with NTAC and to provide this training to you free of charge. We have 3 more parts of the series. As Alicia mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session at the very end to cover any of those questions that came in throughout the 6 parts of it. Again, I'm very happy to be here with you today. Please feel free to post any questions in the chat that you might have during the presentations. We will have some time at the end, and we'll keep an eye on it. My colleague Basilia and my colleague Michelle are also panelists. You'll see their names come up, so they can respond to any questions that you might have during the presentation and collect those for us. With all of that said, and without further ado, I'll hand it over to the important people in this webinar. So I'm so happy to have Carol and Kevin joining us today. They'll introduce themselves. And again, I'm going to go off camera and on mute, but I will be in the chat. So feel free to reach me there. Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Carol Brusca. My bio is right here. I am currently the New Mexico Attorney General's Office mental health provider for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I'm also a marriage and family therapist. I work with, I do individual therapy with individuals that have experienced sexual assault, with individuals that have experienced domestic violence, and also those in recovery, as well as working on a street outreach team with individuals who are the highest utilizers of first responder services. So I keep myself busy by doing lots of different things so that I can continually stay up on what types of trauma people are experiencing and the best ways to deal with that. So as a consequence, I'm working with Justice and Justice has been a really good fit for me. So I can spread the information that I get when I learn new things, because I'm constantly trying to read up on what's new and what's helpful, because if I can help somebody else to increase their wellness, I feel like I've done what I need to do. So I'm really excited to be here today, glad to get started, and I'm going to turn it over to my buddy, Kevin.
Thanks, Carol. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. This is really great that you could be with us. Back in 2011, I first got into ICAC. I transferred into the unit as the unit supervisor and became the commander for the state as well. And it was an eye-opener for me in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that I learned at the time was we had shift come in, I think, within the first month of when I was there. And I went to the presentation and really didn't know anything about it. And I had written off a lot of personal experiences, feelings, et cetera, and emotional responses I've had through my career as just being, part of what the job was. And, it was interesting. And then I started exploring it more and embraced it and incorporated it into our program. And that continued on till my retirement, and then the opportunity came to work with these folks to be able to continue to share that information or try to bring that information into other agencies, and it's been very rewarding since then. So I kind of not nearly as smart as Carol is, but I do have some worldly experiences and probably can relate to a lot of the different situations that you folks deal with on a daily basis or over time.
Kevin, it has nothing to do with smarts. It's just that I have very short attention span, so I have to learn lots of stuff to keep me occupied. You're smarter than I am in so many ways. So the objectives that we're going to cover today, we're going to introduce the idea of secondary trauma and traumatic stress and explain what that is. We're going to review how the body responds to trauma and stress. We're going to discuss the cognitive signs and symptoms of traumatic stress, and then look at resilience and discuss resilience and provide tools. So our hope is, like Kevin said, that you can walk out of here today with some concrete things that you can start doing and that you can, use right away, so that it's nothing that you're going to have special equipment. It's nothing that you're going to have to go in to get some extra training. We're going to give you the down and dirty today, and you can start using it right away.
And you might find some of these things you may have already done and just not realize that they may be beneficial for what we're talking about. So one of the most things that we need to get across to everybody is that one of the things I know I experienced when I first started getting involved with SHIFT and the whole program and all the, thought process with it and the tools and everything, there were concerns that it was, how can I relate this to people? Why should I open up? It's supposed to be tough, supposed to handle all these different things. And it's really not the case. The problem is that, and I did it, we would just harbor those things in and not, discuss anything with anybody or, a particular case, how, it impacted me, or if I got overwhelmed, from the amount of volume that we had. And, we really didn't have any resources or support to go to for any assistance other than ourselves. So the point of this is to kind of break through that stigma of just realizing it's okay to talk about these things, and it's all right to, discuss it with peers, with, family members, with MHP personnel, whoever you're comfortable talking to. It's a good thing.
So what is vicarious trauma? Vicarious trauma is the experience that we have when we witness someone else's trauma. And it doesn't have to be in person that we witness this. It can be, we can witness it by hearing someone's story, by watching it on a video, by reading it. So any way that you can get that information, you can become vicariously traumatized. And when that happens, when we see something that's trauma to somebody else, so we see a car accident, we see something happen, like some people are getting vicariously traumatized by watching information that's going on about the war in Ukraine right now. They watch that and then they can be traumatized by that. You can be traumatized in your work if you're working with any type of offender, or if you're working with any type of victim. All of those areas, anytime that you are going to be witnessing someone else's trauma, you can become traumatized. And what happens when we do experience someone else's trauma is that our brain tries to protect us. And our brain doesn't know that that trauma is not happening to us, but it's happening to someone else. So we typically go into fight, flight, or freeze. When this happens, the reptilian part of our brain takes over, and the reptilian part of the brain does not have the ability to think. It has the ability to act. So our thinking shuts down, the logical part of our brain shuts down, and we respond. So just like if I had a ball in my hand right now and we were all sitting live in an audience and I threw the ball out to you, the majority of us would not have to say, gee, there's a ball coming right at my face, I wonder what I should do. We would instinctually put our hands up to catch that ball. Well, when our brain sees something that is very traumatic, it doesn't automatically distinguish that it's happening to us or someone else. And so it automatically, instinctually tries to protect us. And then so we'll get a little bit of oxytocin to get us motivated to do something. And then when we get that oxytocin in our system, we get a rush of cortisol. And during that period of time, the things that are necessary for us to be safe go online, and the things that are not necessary for us to be safe shut down. So, for instance, our heart rate increases, our blood pressure increases. We're not getting as much oxygen to the brain because our brain doesn't need to think as much, but we need to be able to act. So there's blood flowing to our hands, our feet to get us out. Our digestion slows down because digestion is not necessary if we're in a critical situation where our life is in danger. So you might notice that if you have been listening to stories of someone else's trauma, or you've witnessed someone else's trauma, that maybe your hands get kind of clammy. You notice that your heart rate is increasing. You notice that maybe your brain gets a little bit foggy, and you might have some tension in your arms, your legs, that to get you moving. So the primitive brain has taken over. You go into fight, flight, or freeze. Your brain quickly assesses the situation. Can I fight my way out of this situation? Do I need to run away? Or is this situation so overwhelming and there is no answer, so I'm going to freeze? And each time we witness someone else's trauma, there's a very good likelihood that we're going through this experience. After a while, if we haven't released all the cortisol and gotten ourselves back to like status quo, then we can be very, very high on alert, and little things can set us off. So if part of your job is to witness other people's trauma all day long, and you haven't had any ability to release that, the cortisol and release the adrenaline and get yourself back to status quo, it piles on top of each other and piles on top of each other. So that's what can happen. Now, we can have some psychological responses, which would be anxiety and dissociation. The anxiety would be we begin to feel anxious about what we're witnessing. And then the dissociation can be where we feel very distant from it. So it's kind of like it's happening in a movie. So we see it happening, but it's as if we're not there live and in person. And again, like this says, it's an autonomic survival response. We don't have control over it happening. We can prepare ourselves. So one of the things that I work with people that have experienced trauma or that experience vicarious trauma on a regular basis, I work with them on preparing themselves to go into a situation. So if you know that you're going to be listening to someone's traumatic story, or if you know that you're going to be viewing videos that have traumatic information, you can prepare yourself in advance. So when you go in, you have a sense of, a little bit more sense of control. And then after the fact, you can take some steps to really bring yourself back down. And we're definitely going to be talking about some of those things today.
And just to reflect on what Carol just said, I remember extensively through a lot of training that we had for regular law enforcement where, you know, you were taught about and how to work through tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, any of those things that may impact you during a stressful situation. And what Carol's referencing is you may experience similar reactions to something you've never actually been involved with. I remember I had a case where we had a production case and we did a search warrant, and the victim was a young girl. As we approached the residence, she was standing in the driveway. And when I looked at her, I froze for a minute because my mind, all of a sudden I started visualizing, you know, the horror that she went through, and now this person's standing right in front of me. So it can impact people different ways, but it's similar to how I mentioned about the tunnel vision. When you train for, you know, high stress situation, you condition yourself and you understand what your body and your mind's going through, and then it allows you to process that and deal with it.
So some of the signs and symptoms. Now, like Gabby said, this has been a series, so there's been some of them that we've already talked about. And with each of these, the 5 in the series, we'll go over the specifics. But the physical is how the physical symptoms of vicarious trauma. So what are the things that impact our body? The cognitive is impacting our brain and our thinking. The behavioral is how we behave. So do our behaviors change when we've been experiencing vicarious trauma? The emotional is how do we know emotionally? Are we getting more tearful? Are we getting sad or depressed or angry? And then our worldview, by that we mean how, you know, our spiritual life, our religious life, how we view the world. All of those are impacted.
And one of the things I always hit home on a lot of these presentations is the communication under behavioral can be probably most impacting for anybody beyond yourself. So whether it's family members, friends, coworkers, if you don't have that communication, it's going to impact them as well. So whatever you may be going through, you may not even realize it can be affecting them too.
So when to say when? What we're talking about here is that when we are continually, as part of our job or as part of what happens in our life, when we're continually experiencing the trauma of other people, it can have an impact. Like we talked about on the previous slide, there is some kind of impact that's going to happen. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be permanent. It doesn't mean that it has to be negative forever. It's just something that we want to remind you about right now so you can begin to pay attention, so you can begin to figure out what you need to do. So what we're talking about is normal, warning, and trouble indicators. And when we're talking about that, that is your response to the traumatic things that you see. So if a normal, in part of your job, you might have to hear somebody's trauma story, or you might have to look at materials of trauma. A normal response that we would hope that you would have would be that in the moment when you're working on that, or you're sitting with that person, or you're listening to the information, you would be present for that. But then after you leave, it doesn't stick with you and it doesn't intrude on your thoughts at a later time. If it's a warning sign, if you're at the place where it's a warning sign, you've sat with somebody or you've watched videos or you've read materials, and then intermittently the rest of the day, maybe it's it pops back in your brain, or maybe it's mildly intrusive so it doesn't really go away. A trouble indicator would be that you've spent the morning looking at some things or talking to victims or whatever your job might be, and then you can't get that out of your head. And then it's intrusive and disruptive. And this could go on for several days or potentially several weeks. That's a trouble indicator. So in my own life, as a therapist, part of what we learn in school is to be fully present for the individuals that we are working with at the time. So consequently, you have to be able to be fully present And then when that person is gone, you leave their stuff behind and you're fully present for the next person. So I was working with an individual at one point, and she had experienced multiple rapes throughout her lifetime, and it was coming up on the anniversary of one of those rape experiences, and she was pretty upset, understandably. So she came into my office to talk to me. She went into great detail about the whole situation, about what preceded it, what happened afterwards, the intimate details of what was taking place during the incident. And I knew the location that she was talking about, and I knew her well enough to know how she would be responding to what was going on. And so it touched me very deeply. And what happened is, after she left our session, what I would normally do is just kind of put that in a box and be prepared for the next client. I wasn't able to do that time. And so her story kept popping up in my head. I could visualize the location where she was, and it was just repeating in my head. So I'm trying to hold a place for the next client, and this first client's story is sticking with me. So in my brain, I'm confused because A, the stories don't usually stick with me, and B, I'm really trying hard to refocus so I can be there for the second person. This went on through that second session and through the third session. And so since for me, normal is non-persistent, non-intrusive, put it in a box, I'm good for the next client, I knew that for me, this was a trouble indicator. Now, the key about trouble indicators is everybody's going to have their own level of what's normal, warning, and trouble indicators. But if anybody recognizes that they're holding on to a story, a scene, an image, and it's been longer than 2 weeks, you really want to go get some support and some help. Certainly before that, if you feel comfortable. But if it's still sticking with you for 2 weeks, that's definitely a trouble indicator. For me, when I realized it was a trouble indicator, even though it was just 3 hours, I went out and I took a walk, and I got some water, and I had some lean protein, all the things that we typically tell people to do. And then it was still sticking with me. So what I did was I went to talk to one of my coworkers. And obviously I didn't want to traumatize her with the information that I had just heard. So what I did is I talked about how it made me feel. And that was enough to talk about how it made me feel, that it was really upsetting, why it was upsetting, the things that were sticking with me. And then afterwards, I was able to process that and go on. Why 2 weeks? Because typically, if it's not getting any better at all by 2 weeks, it's time for some intervention. Typically, what we see is that if you are, are impacted by trauma yourself or somebody else's, it should get less and less and less. And then by 2 weeks, you should notice a significant difference. So if you're still at that high, persistent and intrusive and disruptive state at 2 weeks, that's when it's best to get some intervention so you don't have to struggle or suffer with it any longer. Thank you for the question.
And Carol, I think one of the key parts for people to take away from that comparison and what your experience was is that you may or may not, if it's a day or two or a couple of days or even during that period of time that you just discussed, it may back off a little bit where it's dropping down into a lower threshold. It may not be, where you experience it and the next day you wake up and, it's completely gone. But if it's progressively starting to back off, and, that's important to realize too. It's what Carol's kind of trying to really express is that if it consistently stays the same, then it may be time to speak to somebody else about it.
Right. So if it's getting, if you notice that it's not as persistent or intrusive, every day it's a little bit less, then you're on track to processing it. But if it's staying exactly the same, then your brain is probably struggling with processing it and getting it into your long-term memory where you don't have to deal with it anymore. So that's when you want to have some intervention, to have somebody help you walk through that process to get the information processed.
So I'm sure none of you could really relate to these, but we put them in there anyways. The compounding factors, insufficient resources. I'm sure everybody has ample staff, proper equipment, and everything that they need. And if they don't have it on hand, they can just call somebody up and they'll step right in and help out. It's not true. And we know it's not. I mean, I know towards the end of my career, it just progressively was more and more that we were doing more with less. And, but our demand increased. So we had less resources, more cases. I remember probably one of the most difficult things that I had to do is when we had to triage cyber tips, where, you know, there was a possibility that, you know, we may be missing a victim, but we didn't have enough information to act on. And we just didn't have resources to pursue everything that we wanted to. So we would have to triage things. And then realizing too that there's limitations in what you can do. I mean, you're trying to help. In a lot of cases you can help, but there's times sometimes you can't, or you can't even identify who a victim is. So all those different things can kind of start to build up within inside you. It can impact you where, you know, you might have trouble just making simple decisions. You might get might be a little foggy, difficulty with your productivity at work, where you're not really performing the way that you were. Become cynical, or, you know, you just got a negative attitude towards work or towards friends, and, you know, lost a sense of humor. And Gabby always picks on me with sense of humor because mine's more of a dry one. But I can reflect on from times when I experienced this, and I would just walk around in a fog before I even realized, you know, what was going on. And I learned more about it, you know, through this program. There were days that if I were overwhelmed, I would shut down. I really wasn't talking to people, but I would be in a fog at times just because my head was spinning from so many different things going on.
And some other things that might occur. So understandably, everyone that I know of, regardless of what their job is, people are feeling overwhelmed. And if you are in a job where you have a lot of work to do, and if you have a lot of work to do and you don't feel like you've got the resources or there's other things going on, you could definitely feel overwhelmed. So there can be some lack of understanding from the general public also about the type of work you do. I know that when I'm working with people in recovery, there's a lack of understanding that they're really struggling. Many of the folks that are in recovery actually ended up using because they've been traumatized. And so there's not that compassion that you might have if it was something else. And they think, well, if they're just drug users, why don't they get over it? So there's a lack of understanding from the general public about the work that I do, about the work that you do if you're working with victims, or the work that people, you know, if you're working with, if you're in a CAC and you're working with victims, does the public understand? If you're working with ICAC, is that the Internet Crimes Against Children, does the general public understand what you're doing? So that can make you feel more overwhelmed, and the responsibility to protect the community from possible reoffense. If you're doing a type of work like probation and parole, or if you are even if you're doing work where you help to put someone in jail, so any kind of law enforcement job, if you're concerned that person might reoffend, that can definitely be overwhelming. And then if you're working with victims or offenders on a regular basis, obviously that can be very stressful. And like we said, your increased caseload, that's always going to happen no matter what the job is. As far as I know, if you're doing any kind of human services work, if you're doing any kind of law enforcement work, it feels like there's never enough individuals doing the work, and there's way too many people that are out there needing the services. So all of these things together aggravate the negative effects. So this is your brain on chronic stress. And what chronic stress is as compared to traumatic stress, as compared to acute stress. So the chronic stress is something that's going to be long-term. It's going to be, the chronic stress is something like sitting in rush hour traffic every day and it's just kind of picking away at you. Chronic stress is things like living with someone with a terminal illness. Chronic stress is like trying to take care of your kids and your parents at the same time while you're trying to take care of yourself and work. So the chronic stress can just kind of pick away at you, and you don't necessarily notice that that it's happening because it started out as small, and then it's just continued to get worse, but kind of a low level worse. If you want to talk about acute stress, that would be like I was supposed to run a marathon and I broke my leg. And so that would be acute stress because I'm really frustrated that I had a plan and now I've got a broken leg and I have to deal with all of that on top of the fact that I can't go run the marathon. But both of those are different from trauma, which is an experience that, such as if we were in a car accident, or if we were in a war, if we were in a domestic violence situation, if we were the victim of a crime, all of those things would be an acute stress, or a trauma, I mean. All of those would be very traumatic situations, which would be an acute stress also, but they would not be what would be considered chronic stress. So hopefully that distinguishes. Chronic is the one, the long term, that is kind of low level, but it just picks away at you. Acute is something that happens that is pretty intense, but short-lived. And then trauma is something that happens to us or someone else that we witness.
And it's funny because there's different degrees of that you'll experience in life, and Carol can probably go in more depth with this, but just from my own personal experiences, when I was working in that position, my threshold or my tolerance for it was higher than it is now. So my days aren't as exciting as they used to be, but occasionally when stress does come into the mix, it throws me for a loop. I don't handle it and process it the way I did because I don't experience to the level that I don't think I'm conditioned for it, so to speak, as much as I used to be. But that in and of itself does not mean that because you're conditioned for it to ignore it and not learn to identify and learn how to process and work through those things.
So some signs and symptoms, some cognitive stress reactions that you might have. So, you know, some of these things that we can talk about, that, like it says here, unsure, lost, puzzle, these are all problems that we can have from a cognitive standpoint. So if we're thinking cognitive, we're thinking, how is our thinking working? We can have, like Kevin was talking about previously, there can be some things where we're just feeling like we're in a fog. We're feeling that we're very confused. We're feeling that life is kind of like a movie, that it's not happening. We're not in it. We're kind of sitting back and watching it. There can be some memory issues that we might have where our brain isn't functioning like it was. And this is the result of lots of trauma that's been happening over and over, or vicarious trauma that's been happening, and the cortisol and the adrenaline that's still in our brain. And then on top of that, just remembering all of the incident of trauma. So if we're having these experiences, if you're noticing that you didn't used to have issues with your memory, and it's not because you're getting older, and you suddenly have issues with your memory, or if you notice that your brain seems a little bit more foggy, those can all be aspects of cognitive stress reactions.
And I know from my own experiences with this that there were times I thought I was experiencing burnout, just where, you know, my motivation for work, low productivity, just kind of, you know, sometimes bitter, negative, and just not wanting to be there and doing stuff. And I had always heard of and attributed to maybe I just went through a phase of burnout. And then afterwards, and realizing it, experiencing a lot of the things we're talking about, it necessarily wasn't a burnout phase, but just that was the way that I was reacting to particular situations.
So we're going to do a poll question now. And if you would please, in the poll, for the poll questions, please answer in the chat. And the first poll question is going to be, which of the discussed cognitive stress reactions have you experienced? And you might have experienced something that we didn't touch on here. So if there's something that we that you think of as a cognitive reaction that we didn't discuss, feel free to answer that as well. So just please go to your chat right now and then answer which of the discussed stress reactions have you had. Burnout, all of them. Loss of focus, yep. Decision fatigue, memory loss, yep.
I like the decision fatigue one, because I almost found at times where simple things, I would almost go into that analysis paralysis, where I just was trying to process things and come up with a resolution or a solution for it, and I just was looking at it 3,000 ways and just couldn't do it.
Right. Right. And there's some great answers: brain fog, flashbacks, PTSD symptoms. Yep, exactly. Insomnia. All of those are certainly things that can happen if we've experienced someone else's trauma, or if we have chronic stress. Memory loss. Yep. Not as focused. So great answers, everybody. So unfortunately, It sounds like you all are very familiar with what we're talking about. But fortunately, you're here today, so we can give you some suggestions on what you might do. So signs and symptoms, what's happening in my brain? Like we said here, there can be, all of these things can be happening. And we talked about this: brain fog, forgetfulness, losing words, concentration. I know for myself, I can tell if I haven't taken enough time for self-care, because my words go first. I will try to have a conversation, and every word I'm trying to think about, I lose my words, and then that irritates me, and then I get, it makes it even more difficult for me to express my thoughts. So I know it's like, okay, now it's time for some self-care break so that I can get myself back to where status quo is. What's happening here is that we're in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. So if you are continually experiencing someone else's trauma, you are continually being exposed to their stories, that's going to be fight, flight, or freeze over and over and over again. And if that's happening to you, these are the consequences of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you some suggestions on doing that. But I have definitely experienced cognitive stress when I'm not getting the rest I need, and then my tolerance is lower, and I'm forgetting things, and my brain is foggy, and I'm staying up late trying to get schoolwork done, and everything kind of shuts down, and then I forget that I've got appointments, and I have to have everything written down. All of those things are things that I experience. And for me, since I've been doing this work for a long time, I try to be pretty good at monitoring my self-care so that I don't go down that path. But on the occasions that I do, I recognize what those are so that I can then take a look. So now that you know what can be causing all of these symptoms in you, now you can think, okay, I recognize that these are signs that I've been traumatized by someone else's trauma. What can I do to make the situation better so that I don't have to experience this? So our poll question here: how do you relieve your cognitive symptoms of stress? And again, feel free to post that in the chat.
Exercise, meditation, excellent.
Go for a walk or a drive, vent to coworkers, running. Yeah, these are, and so obviously you all are doing some stuff right. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're experiencing the trauma, but you're also doing the things that should be done to help you out. Sleep and meditation, yeah. Prayer, yoga, walking, listening to music. Don't overthink. Boy, that's a good idea, and it's not always easy to carry out.
Yeah, and the
Nutrition.
deep breathing
Little
gets
flexible
referenced a lot too.
I'm sorry, Kevin?
I said deep breathing is getting referenced a lot, which is great because those are simple things that you can do to bring yourself down and ground yourself no matter where you are or what you're doing. You could be in an office, you could be on a witness stand, you could be anywhere if you're starting to experience that. And it's a wonderful little self tool that you can use without anybody even know that you're doing it.
Right. And I see lots of great things. There's music, energy balancing, riding a bike, skating, playing with a dog, reading a Bible. All of these are wonderful tools that you all have in place. So hopefully you can take the tools that you already have and then incorporate some of the new tools that we're giving you today. Binge watch Grey's Anatomy. That's great. So, try to build up your toolbox of tools you can use. I like coloring too. We try to do that when we have live audiences.
And these different ways of reducing, your stress and everything that everybody's mentioning here. This is all towards that, maintaining your well-being. And where Karen had referenced where there's certain times that she does and doesn't, and we all do that. But if you are experiencing anything that we're talking about, it's probably the most imperative time to be doing that self-care, because your body and your brain, it's all in correlation. So your rest, your food, your hydration, all those different things is giving your body and your mind the tools it needs to start to process and deal with these things. If you're not getting any sleep, you're only drinking coffee, and you're not eating, that's not helping you. I mean, it's kind of discipline that you have to force yourself into doing, and then pushing your way through a situation by giving your body the tools that it needs to do its part.
And I think that's a really good point, Kevin. It's a matter of paying attention to what your body is saying and then jumping on it as soon as you can, because then it doesn't get to the point where it's as bad. If you can jump on it, if you notice, gosh, I'm feeling a little bit off this morning and I notice that I'm forgetting things, then you jump on it right then instead of waiting until it gets to that point where you have to dig yourself out of a hole. So some stress reduction tools that we want to talk about. So some resets that you can use for your brain that are very, very useful and quick. Humor and laughter. Humor and laughter is good because it increases the oxytocin, and the oxytocin is what's known as the love hormone or the feel-good hormone. It's produced when we do things that make us connect with others. So if we are getting a hug from somebody, if we're spending time laughing with somebody, if we're enjoying a good conversation with someone, going for a walk, all of those things can help us produce oxytocin, and oxytocin counterbalances the effects of the cortisol, which is what the cortisol is, the hormone that happens mostly when we're under stress and when we are experiencing vicarious trauma or trauma. So if you can do something like spend some time, telling a joke or hearing a joke or watching funny cat videos or whatever makes you laugh, then that's going to help you to reset. If you can use your acquired knowledge, whether that's the acquired knowledge around what are the steps that help me to feel better, whether that's the acquired knowledge of experiences that I know can help me to reset myself that are other than these, and then again, like the oxytocin. So all of those things are going to be helpful to make you feel better right there in the moment, and they don't have to be things that you make a lot of effort for. So with respect to the oxytocin, if I remember a really good hug that I had, then I can think about that hug, and the same oxytocin that would be produced when I initially got that hug can be produced again. If I'm petting a dog, if I like dogs and I'm petting a dog, that's going to increase my oxytocin, and that's going to make me feel better. So if it's a positive memory that we can remember, that's going to help the oxytocin. If it's a situation when we can have it right there live, that's going to help the situation. So anything we can do in the moment is going to help us feel better afterwards.
Yeah, and I know I can reflect on certain situations. What Carol just spoke to. I remember, certain photos from vacations and stuff like that. When I was at work, I would have that in a location off in the corner, nothing near my desk or workstation, so I could, I could reflect on something other than what I was dealing with at the moment. And the humor and laughter part is one of those things that you can't always be around people to be telling jokes and everything else. But I found that even when I'm home, if I'm going to watch TV or something like that, and I needed, that little boost, just stay away from negative movies or violent movies or action movies. I put on like the Comedy Channel, just, silly stuff that, was light, make you laugh, even if no one else is around. It's just even by doing those steps will be helpful, even if you're not in a position to be interacting with other people.
All right, everyone. So we're going to play a video now, and if you are listening over the phone, you won't be able to hear the video, but they are available for viewing in the resources Google Drive file that my colleague put in the chat. So just a note, and we're going to go ahead and push play now. Please, panelists, mute yourselves if you have not already done so. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. It's Paul. A lot of people ask me after a long day of voiceover or writing or doing all those creative things that I do, How do I relax? Well, like many other Americans, I come home and I pet my dog. You see, petting your dog is one of the most relaxing things you can possibly do. It releases a hormone called oxytocin, which reduces stress. Also, it lowers your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure. Plus, people who pet their dogs are 5 times more likely to live longer than people who just have cats. Plus, the dogs like it so much, and it's a nice bonding experience. That's right. Good daddy's little boy. Daddy's little boy. Daddy's little boy. That's right. Okay, we're done.
So I have to tell you, when I was watching that video, my dog, who's sitting right here, was looking at the screen. I was waiting for her to start barking, but she didn't. She was looking at us like, "Where's the dog? I hear the dog, but I don't see the dog. What's going on?"
It's a great video.
So, yeah, it is a great video. I'm sorry that somebody got stressed watching it. I can see how that can happen. So, how our brain chemicals can help us. We've got all of these. I mean, there's more chemicals in this in our brain, but these are the things that can help. So dopamine is what we call the reward chemical. And when we do things like celebrate success or eating chocolate, eating dark chocolate, completing a project, all of the things on this list, when we do those things, dopamine is released in our brain. And if we've got enough dopamine going on, then we're going to feel a little bit better. It's going to make us feel like we're not as down or depressed as we might otherwise be. Now, there are people that have actual mental illnesses that do have dopamine and serotonin shortages, that they have to actually take medication for that to help to create that dopamine and serotonin in their brain because they don't have that. But the majority of us do have dopamine and serotonin, but we could sometimes just use a boost. Endorphins are things that, we can exercising, dancing, anything that we do that moves our body. Laughter as well is helpful. So anything that when we're moving our body, that's going to be a natural painkiller that's going to help us out so that we just feel better overall. Again, laughing, a long hot bath, eating more dark chocolate. That's my favorite. Dark chocolate is the cure for everything. So I'd say eat dark chocolate for whatever you want to do. But all of the acts on here, all of the things that you can do here create endorphins, and that's going to be, like it says, the natural painkiller. Now, oxytocin, again, like we talked about, it's the connection hormone, the love hormone. It's the hormone that is going to make us want to be together. That's one of the reasons why there's a researcher, Kelly McGonigal, that talks all about oxytocin and how it is a stress hormone, but it's a stress hormone that makes us want to connect with others. And when we connect with others, that helps us get the support that we need to get through the difficult time that we're having. So again, you can hold hands with somebody, you can pet your dog, you can hang out with your friends. All of these things, when we release oxytocin, it makes us want to do those things, and then more oxytocin is released as we're doing those things. And then serotonin is called the equalizer. So spending some time in the sun, doing some deep breathing, exercising, meditating, eating healthy foods, all of those things are going to help us increase our serotonin. So if we are making sure that we're getting all of these, if we're using all of these hormones, then we should be feeling the reward chemical, the painkiller, the connection hormone, and the equalizer. So that's going to kind of stabilize our mood. That's what it means by the equalizer.
And what's funny is, because as I said, I educated myself on how my brain works. After all the years that I've been alive, I actually started to try to figure things out. And when we had asked the question, what you folks do for stress and try to, clear your head, you came up with a lot of the ones that are on this list here. But for me, what the important part was putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I knew I was doing it to relieve stress, but now when I was learning about how the brain chemicals work and everything else, I kind of almost approach it where if I were stressed, then I could say, oh, I can do this because this will help with this. And understanding that actually helps you along much quicker, because now you realize why you react a certain way, how you react, and how you get through that.
So, yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
All right, everyone, we have one more video. And just as last time, it's not going to play through your phone if you're listening over your phone. So please turn up your computer speakers if you are able to. And if not, the video is available in the resources link. Thank you.
Have you ever wondered why we help others when there's nothing in it for us? While much evolutionary research shows that selfishness has helped us survive, altruism has its equal place in helping us thrive. Hi, I'm Peter Montoya from Thrive Union, and I'll be sharing our current thinking on altruism as part of our How the Brain Works series. There are two main theories for why we developed altruism. The first is reciprocal altruism, which posits that members of a species sometimes sacrifice their own well-being for others in their group, with the expectation that they will receive help in the future when they need it. The second theory is kin selection, which is that we will give up our own well-being to help other close relatives survive. Brain scans show that our own threat response regions light up when a close friend is threatened. As James Cone, a psychology professor who uses brain imaging, explains, the findings show the brain's remarkable capacity to model self to others, that other people close to us become part of ourselves. Helping others releases a bevy of feel-good hormones, endorphins, and neurotransmitters. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and others are released during an act of goodwill. When we assist others, our reward circuitry lights up, including our midbrain, ventral striatum, medial amygdala, and orbital frontal cortex. Helping others activates our nucleus accumbens, the brain region linked to pleasant surprises. At the same time, the stress regions in our brains, such as the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, right anterior insula, and right amygdala, become less active. All of these create the warm glow effect, a pleasant feeling that makes us want to give more to others. Because altruism reduces stress and increases happiness, it leads to better health, lowered blood pressure, and increased life expectancy. How do we build our altruism? First, practice compassionate meditation. Studies show that this increases our empathy and grows parts of the brain, like the left hippocampus, which helps regulate emotions. Second, act altruistically. Contribute a bit of time or money every day. Research shows the amount donated doesn't matter, just that you donate regularly. By actively practicing and building our altruism, we can literally change our brains, experience the warm glow of giving, and truly thrive.
Okay, so we have a few tools that we're going to cover. And this goes hand in hand with what we kind of spoke about with some of the things that some people do to relieve stress, or other things that we're going to cover and you may not be aware of. But the theory behind doing the 30-second and the 5-minute in the daily is maybe all you have is 30 seconds to try to clear your head or ground yourself. You may have some more time, 5 minutes, or just a routine that you can get yourself into for the daily resilience that'll allow you to start to mitigate things and just keep yourself regulated with that. I think we have a handout associated with that. Should be.
Yeah, the link, the handout is available if you follow the Google Drive link that we've put in the chat. Thank you.
So there'll be a one-page article or resource in there. It's resiliency. It's a one-page document. Take a look through it. You'll find that some of those things would be helpful.
So for me, for the 30-second resets that I like to do, I'm constantly looking at breathing. And what I use for the breath work that I do is I do belly breathing. And the reason that I do that is because when you do belly breathing, it starts all the way down, obviously, in your belly. When you take a deep breath in, your stomach expands. And in that process, the air's going all the way down. The reason that I like belly breathing as a reset is because when we are in our parasympathetic nervous system is in charge, our vagus nerve, the nerve that runs at the base of the neck all the way down to the colon, when we're in parasympathetic, that is relaxed. And that's, so we're in on that side. When our sympathetic nervous system, the system that's in place when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, when that's in place, our vagus nerve is activated in a way we don't want it to be. So when we're doing belly breathing, I kind of like to think of it as like a massage for your vagus nerve, because it's hitting every point along the way. So for me, belly breathing is a great thing to do to reset our vagus nerve, to get us back to the parasympathetic side, to make us relax and calm, because we can't both be calm and stressed at the same time. One of the things that's a 30 second that I like to think about that I do when I'm having a rough day is humming or singing at the top of my lungs. Because if you do that, again, that activates the vagus nerve and gets it back to the parasympathetic side. So if you have a rough day at work, roll up the windows, turn on the air conditioner and the radio, and or maybe the heater, depending on where you are, but turn that music up and sing as loud as you can for your drive home, and you will probably feel much, much better by the time you get there. Another thing that's here is drink a big glass of water. I do that every morning. That's how I start my day. And then getting up and moving your body like we talked about previously, that gets the endorphins going. So anytime we can get the endorphins going, that's going to make us feel better.
Some of the things that we just discussed, the smell of lemons and oranges, if you have the ability to put a diffuser at your workstation or in your office area, I'm sure people would appreciate the smell, but it does reset your brain. It relaxes you. Carol mentioned when she wakes up in the morning, she has a big glass of water. She's the one that got me into doing that, and for a variety of reasons, that your body dehydrates at night and you build up toxins, so that just you get that brain reset when you wake up. I drink a whole big glass of water to get the body hydrated again and get rid of toxins that are in there. And they sound like silly things, but when you start to understand, like I mentioned earlier, how the brain works and how the brain reacts, and you do these things and you start to see the results, it kind of makes it almost like a roadmap, where if you're dealing with something or you're preparing yourself to deal with something, you know what steps to take.
So what I would like to do right now, and since most of us, we can't see everybody, it'll be easier because you're going to be incognito. If we can just try this exercise with everybody, if you're willing to give this a try, I'm going to count us out on this. And this is just, we don't have to do belly breathing. We can just do any kind of breathing. If you want to really focus on filling up your belly with air and then moving that up, that's great. But what I'd like you to all do is slowly inhale to the count of 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then hold, and then exhale, 1, 2, 3, and then pause, and then inhale, 1, 2, 3, hold, exhale, 1, 2, 3, pause. And by doing this 5 times, it will lower your heart rate, and it will lower your blood pressure in the moment. So it's something that you can do if you know you're going to meet with someone that you're going to have to hear their trauma, if you're stuck in traffic and you're getting frustrated, if you're trying to deal with your kids after a long day and they all want something at the same time. Anytime you notice at all that you're feeling that your heart rate's going up, or maybe you're going into fight, flight, or freeze, practice this process right here, and you'll notice that over time, you will feel better. Now, the key, like any other thing that we want to become a habit, we have to practice it. In order for it to be there and be accessible when we need it, we have to have it down. So I would recommend that you practice this every morning when you wake up. Practice it 5 times just so that becomes your morning habit. And then when you're doing this, say to yourself, this is what I will use when I'm feeling stressed, or this is what I will use when I'm feeling angry, or you fill in the blanks, whatever you need to tell your brain. But then practice first thing in the morning, practice it again around lunchtime, and then practice it again before you go to bed. And when you're telling your brain that, when you get into a circumstance where you are feeling stressed, where you're feeling angry, where you're feeling anxious, your brain is going to remember that connection between what you told it to do and what it needs to do. So then that breathing will come and you'll think, oh yeah, I've got to do that breathing. And that will help bring you back. And it's something, again, like Kevin was said, you can do it anywhere, in the car, on the jury stand, in the office, when you're meeting with somebody, anytime. Obviously, no one's going to criticize you for breathing because, you know, that's the expectation. So you give it a shot.
And one extra step you can do while you're doing those breathing techniques, it sounds silly like some of the other things I say, but there is truth to it. You might find yourself to get tense up in your shoulders and everything if you have anxiety going on or you're just stressed. One simple thing when you're doing the breathing techniques, turn your hands upside down and place them on your lap. You'll feel your shoulders will relax. It relaxes a lot of your upper body just by doing that. So if you incorporate that with the breathing, you probably will find that it will be even more beneficial.
And Kevin, that's a great point, because oftentimes if we've been in fight, flight, or freeze a lot, if our shoulders are tense, it's because our brain has been in the fight mode. So our brain has been preparing us to fight, so we have tension in our neck and shoulders. If our legs are feeling restless or we're feeling some tension in our legs, it's probably because our brain has been in flight mode. If we're having some digestive issues or our stomach is not feeling very settled, it could be that we're in that overwhelmed freeze mode. So thanks for bringing that up, Kevin.
So we have the
start, or you want me to start?
So when you have a little bit more time, more than 30 seconds, you have 5 minutes, and everybody has those times during the day where they have a few minutes and they can do things. Come up with things that you may not even think of. I remember when I first went to ICAC, I would see people, some of the investigators, some of the forensic workers in the office, they might go out back and throw a baseball around a little bit. And I was like, what's going on here? These people are, they're all throwing a ball around. From the world I came from, they would never do that at work. So it kind of, they were doing it without even realizing what they were doing. This was before, this program even came around to us. So they had figured that out, that it was important to come up with things that gives you a break. When you have your lunch, don't sit at your desk. Go somewhere else for lunch. Go into a lunchroom. Go somewhere where there may be other people, maybe a TV on, or different things you can interact with. Or you have the opportunity to go outside, even better. But when you just stay locked in one place, it's not good. You have to be able to get up and go to somewhere else. And when you do that, talk to people and talk to them about stuff other than work too. So you can actually talk to them about anything. Talking about, a movie that you saw, a meal that you had, a recipe that you tried. You can do different things like that to kind of just break people's, where their mind is at that moment. And when you guys do things at work, talk about the positive things too, not just the negative ones. And if, you guys accomplish something or somebody does something that's great for a case, or, save the victim, whatever it may be, talk about it, bring that up, positive. And a lot of times we get caught up and worried about the negative things that, forget to mention that to each other. And especially as a supervisor, it's really important for you to have that communication and recognition for your team.
And certainly the 2 to 3 minute guided meditation, I'm a big fan of that. There's an app that I use, it's called Insight Timer, and they have lots of different meditations that you can use. There's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5, 10, 20 minutes. I recommend those because it's a great way to reset in the moment, and it really has a lasting effect. Daydreaming is one of my favorite things, as well as listening to music and coloring when I have the opportunity. So all of these, just keep a list, try them out, see what works, and then if none of them work, then continue to go on down the list.
So the daily, I think that coming from a lot of your backgrounds, you're very disciplined, whether you're an investigator or forensics, whatever component you may be involved in, you'll find that you're very disciplined in your work. And there's no reason why you can't incorporate some sort of that discipline into your daily life. So the daily plan for some people may be easier because you can come up with a regimen of things that you're going to do for your well-being. So it could be something as, who you're associating with, who you're talking with, who you're engaging with. One thing I remember I lost sight of as I talked to and hung around people I worked with only. And I realized afterwards that there's a lot of interesting people out in the world that have different perspectives on things, and, kind of gave me a break from some of the things I was experiencing when I would go play golf with a guy that sold Matco tools, because he was talking to me about tools and it had nothing to do with work. So those are, some things that you can start to think of. Physical activity, a lot of people reference that, and that's great. And when you do understand how that comes into play with your well-being, that may, alter when you do it. It may increase the amount that you're doing. And it's kind of one of those things that if you do it, it's only going to benefit you. So it's not anything that's negative with that. But things that may seem simple can be put into a plan. Getting the right sleep hygiene. Get to bed at a certain time. Don't stay up way later than you have to. When you go to bed, sleep. Or try to sleep without having that distraction of laying in bed and watching TV all night and then falling to sleep with the TV on. I was probably one of the biggest offenders of that for years, and man, that messed with my head, because I would have things on TV would get incorporated into my dreams. I wasn't getting sound sleep, but I didn't even realize it. And then now I still watch TV when I go to bed. I set a timer for 30 minutes and it shuts off. And if I'm in the middle of something, it goes off. That's it. And it just took me a little while. Other people, I can't sleep in a quiet room, so I have to have that. But those are things that you can build in with your discipline and structure into your day. The hobbies, the electronics. You gotta, when it's sleep time, it's sleep time. If you can, I think someone mentioned a few moments ago in the chat where they shut off the ringer on their phone after a certain hour. If you can, that's great. If you are in a position where you can completely mute it or shut it off when you're going to bed and you're not on call, then I encourage it, because if it's not there and it's not on, it's less likely that you're going to grab it. And I still do it to this day. Once in a while, I may wake up in the middle of the night and I'll start reading news articles or something on my phone, and that's it. Once I start doing that, I'm not going back to sleep, where if I just ignored it, didn't look at the phone, I probably would have dozed back off within a few minutes. So it's important to have that disconnect and allow your brain to rest, so your body can rest too.
Yeah, and there's a couple things. Sleep hygiene is one of my very favorite things to talk about. So Kevin hit on some of the things that trying not to have electronics on. If you do need to read something before bed, or you do need to kind of transition into sleep, I would highly recommend reading a book, like a book from paper, because then you're not getting that blue light stimulation, and it's also going to help if you read something inspiring. So then the last things that you're thinking about before bedtime are positive things. If you can have a piece of paper and a pencil by your bedside, so when you're getting ready to fall asleep, if there's things in your brain, that can help you as well, so that you can write those things down and do a brain dump beforehand. Or if by chance you wake up in the night and remember, oh, I got to make that phone call or do that email, instead of keeping your brain awake by holding on to that, you can write it down on a piece of paper. Keeping your room at a little cool temperature, that's going to help be more conducive to sleep. Yeah, like Kevin said, he watches TV. That's not something that I recommend, but if you've got to do it, you got to do it. Some people just need that. And if that's what you need, don't beat yourself up over it, but make sure that you're doing other things to help your sleep. I recommend that the bedroom is only for sleep and sex, and that's it. You don't want to do your work in your bedroom. You don't want to get on the phone and chat with friends there. You want to keep that as for sleep and sex only, so that when you cross that threshold, then your brain knows what to expect. Your brain's going to say, okay, we're crossing this threshold, and so my brain is going to be prepared for these things. My brain's not going to be amped up to prepare to do some work emails, or it's not going to be ready for a conversation, a tough conversation with my best friend. It's going to be transitioning to something that's more calm and relaxing. And then another thing I always talk about, because I love sleep and sleep hygiene, I watch my sleep. My watch will tell me how many hours of sleep that I get. And for the longest time, my focus was trying to get 8 hours of sleep. And when I was getting closer to that, I realized that my watch tracks not only my sleep, but my deep sleep. And when I realized that my deep sleep was being tracked, it seemed like it was lower than it should be. So I did some research into how to increase my deep sleep. And what I learned is that if you can drink some tart cherry juice, just a little bit of tart cherry juice, maybe a half hour before you go to bed, that will help your body to produce melatonin naturally, which should help you go to sleep at night. So those are just some of the things that I do to help my sleep, because I've never been one to sleep that's been a good sleeper. So I try to do as many things as I possibly can. And then the participate in hobbies. Research has shown that if you can have a hobby that takes all of your focus, it's like a mini vacation for your brain from everything else. So my hobby is ballet, and when I'm doing ballet, there's no space in my brain left for anything else. So I focus on the ballet, my arms, my hands, my feet, my neck, my legs, and there's no space for anything. So for an hour and a half of class, I get a break from all of the worries that I have for the day. If you start to learn a new skill, whether it's a new skill like building a paper airplane or creating a chocolate souffle or learning how to fly a plane, whatever your hobby or whatever your new skill might be. If you can go from beginning to end and complete that new skill, it's going to increase your happiness, and it's going to increase the oxytocin, because you can feel like I was in charge of this, I stuck with it, and I achieved a goal. So anything like that that you can do that for you personally would help you feel better is a great thing to do. There is music that you can actually listen to on Insight Timer. When I was talking about that previously, they do have some music that's set at, and I don't understand how this is, what this is all about, so you'd have to do the research, but there's different levels of hertz, I want to say, but it's the sound and the type of sound it is, and some of those are supposed to be really conducive to sleep. So if you go again on Insight Timer, they can tell you that. They also have really, really boring bedtime stories. So if you're having a hard time going to sleep, you just pull up one of the boring bedtime stories, and that will put you to sleep right away. There's one, my favorite one to put me to sleep is about a woman who wants to make an apple pie, and she talks about looking in her cupboard to see what's in there, and then going to the grocery store and picking out apples. And she says it in a very monotone voice, and it's not exciting topic, and it inevitably makes me fall asleep. I've never been awake until the end of the pie story. So you might try that one.
Yeah, and some people experience it. I think it popped up in the chat where if you have too much noise, or in my case, not enough noise, I cannot sleep in complete silence. So that's why I would do the TV. A lot of the times now, I won't utilize the TV, and I just I have I'll put on white noise, whether it's Calm app or something similar to that has some natural sound that's just looping, and I sleep very well with those. And I'll turn that up louder too, especially if my kids are still up when I go to bed, and I can hear, I have vaulted ceilings, so I'll hear that echo through the house. I'll turn that up louder so it drowns out the noise from other people being around, or keep it down lower when it's completely quiet, because I just need that little bit of noise for me, at least, to sleep well.
And for those people that are living in studio apartments, try to make your bed your place. All right. So try not to sit on your bed to watch TV. I mean, I obviously don't know how large your studio apartment is, but if you have the option of, even if you're sitting on the floor to watch TV, or sitting on a couch to watch TV, so that you can keep your bed as, let's call it, your sacred space, where the only thing that happens in that location is sleep and sex. Do the best that you can to make that separation, so then even if you don't have a separate room to go to, your brain knows when your body hits that bed that that's the time to slow down.
So now that we've discussed some different options, different techniques, and some insight into how the brain works and how we react to things, why bother doing it? Well, it's pretty easy. I mean, you can have that entire shift of that negativity or that alleged burnout, like I was comparing myself with, to, being more positive about things and a different outlook on situations that you're in, whether it's personal or at work. Like I said, that positive thinking definitely helps outside of work, where, if you are a little overwhelmed and, you're kind of withdrawn, that may help you reverse that, because now you can recognize that and get you more engaged with family and friends in different events that may be going on. And you'll also find too that fog that I referenced may start to lift a little bit. Your ability to see things a little bit clearer, not have that analysis paralysis, and be able to make decisions on things that you used to, might definitely make a day a lot easier. And you got adaptability, and you have to realize that you're not in a position where you can change everything in your world. So sometimes you have to go with the flow, and you adapt to whatever environment or situation that you're dealing with, knowing that you may not be able to change it at that time. So that and the reflection of that self-awareness of the things that we talked about and how the brain works and these different techniques, like I said, if you use it almost as like a roadmap where you really start to embrace it and realize the things that go on and how to mitigate them, it's a lot easier.
And, when we're talking about positive thinking, there was a research study that came out of positive psychology that looked at positive thinking. And what they discovered is that if you tell yourself every day that you're going to look for 3 good things that are happening in your life, whether that's you saw something that was nice, like somebody opened the door for somebody, or maybe somebody opened the door for you, or the person in front of you at Starbucks bought your drink, or you got an unexpected check in the mail, anything that's positive. If you focus on spending your day looking for 3 good things every day, the research showed that even after they stopped this study, which was fairly short, the people were having benefits from it even 6 months afterwards, because you've retrained your brain. So if we think about a time where, you woke up in the morning and you stubbed your toe first thing, and then you told yourself, oh, this is going to be one of those days because I started out the morning by stubbing my toe. And then inevitably you notice many, many things that go wrong that day. And when that happens, the rest of the day feels like it's a negative day. Well, by that same token, if you have the ability to wake up and right away notice, wow, I'm so happy that it's a sunny day as opposed to a cloudy day. Or I know that, I woke up and there was a nice text from my child or my mom or my sibling. If you make yourself focus on noticing the positive, your brain is trained to look for the positive, and there's not that space to look for the negative. So positive thinking is, it really does have an impact. It really does have an impact in helping us increase our resilience, because it does make our brain focus on things that are more productive for us. And I saw there was a question about cherry tablets, tart cherry tablets. I believe they do, but you might want to do a little bit of research to see if the cherry tablets have the same effect as cherry juice. And so our next question is, what is one new tool or technique that you learned today that to relieve cognitive stress responses? Five count breath, laughter, belly breathing. Yep. Breathing. Yep. Dark chocolate. Yep. That's my big one. Great. Good. Neck roll. Lemons. Good. Holding the palms up.
Focus on the positive.
Wonderful. Another dark chocolate fan. Breathing. Palms up. Kevin, I always like it when you say that, because that never occurs to me until you say it. And I always think, how am I going to begin to incorporate that into my day? Because I want to incorporate that in, and it just never occurs to me. So I don't know how I can. I just have to, maybe I just need to practice it every day. Open up my palms and say, this is what I'm going to use when I'm feeling stressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
30 seconds. Don't work in your bed. Deep breathing.
Gratitude.
Deep breathing, gratitude, 2020. Yep.
Some great answers there.
Yes, absolutely. So it sounds like hopefully all of you will be able to try to to take some of these and start using them today. So most of these that you can do, I mean, certainly you need to have a lemon or an orange if you're going to do that. But most of these are things that you can do with very, very little equipment and things that are going to be easy for you to manage.
So we identified that most of us are very disciplined in our professions. Now we kind of realize now that we can take this and put together a daily plan, implement that plan to make things in life a lot easier for us. The point of that is that everything looks great on paper, and some days aren't going to work out the way you want them to, or maybe for an hour, or maybe for a minute. But you got to stay focused on that goal or that objective, and you move forward to it. We all hit speed bumps. We all have our little pitfalls, but you just keep moving forward with that plan, and you'll find that you will be more resilient to things you deal with in life, and a lot of the different benefits of that we discuss will start to shine through as well.
So this is one of our favorite, at least my favorite things. Anyone can slay a dragon, she told me, but try waking up every morning and loving the world all over and over again. That's what takes a real hero. So when you consider that you are intentionally putting yourself in a difficult position, whether that's as a paramedic, as a CAC, as a law enforcement, as whatever your job is, where you're working with victims of trauma or you're getting traumatized yourself, it takes a hero to do that knowingly, day in and day out. And we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So we're going to review real quick. We did introduce secondary trauma and traumatic stress. We reviewed how the body responds, discussed the cognitive signs and symptoms, and then the resiliencies, what resiliency is, and provided tools and techniques. So hopefully you're able to take something from that, and it'll help you change your life.
All right. And with that, I want to thank you both so much. That was so many tools and tips and tricks and techniques that we proposed to people today. So hopefully the audience got at least something that sounded interesting, that they haven't attempted, that they would really be interested in trying. And this is always our goal here. I know this can get very overwhelming just from a standpoint of, oh, these are so many things that I might need to pay attention to. But we only make all of these suggestions because sometimes there's one thing that strikes you. Like the tart apple or cherry juice thing, I had never heard of that before, and I trust Carol with anything she says. So, it's worth an attempt if that's something that bothers you. So any small step that you can take to work on your wellness, to invest some time in yourself, we're all for it. This is what we're here for. Just so you know, there's another 3 webinars that are coming up that will address emotional, behavioral, and worldview signs and symptoms. So please join us for any of those. And there are recordings. I think the next slide down is the links to the recordings of the previous 2 sessions. So go ahead and watch those with us as well. We do have maybe about 3 minutes left over that I wanted to ask people for if they had any more questions regarding the topic at hand. Feel free to post those on the chat right now and I'll take a look at them. I did have a couple here in my back pocket from the registrations. So thank you for those of you that submitted. And I wanted to address one of them because it's not something that we necessarily cover in the webinar series, but it's a question that a lot of people have. So can one of you please address if we can ethically speak with a personal therapist about cases that have affected us very deeply, and how would we go about speaking to a therapist ethically? Carol, that will probably be you.
Yeah, I'm gonna, Kevin, unless you want to take this one, I'll take it.
No, go ahead, Carol. That's more.
So yes, it is ethical. You need, I work with, like I said, I worked with our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and they do talk to me about struggles that they're having, and they do, for the most part, they don't go into depth about what they're everything that they saw, but they don't, they might tell me some of the situation around it, and it's perfectly ethical because I know what I'm getting into, and they know how to be respectful about what they're telling me. So if it helps them to process what they're thinking or what's perseverating with them, they can certainly talk to me about that. And how do you find a therapist to work with? One of the things to do is find out someone who is familiar with trauma who's comfortable with trauma and is able to address your needs. I've had some therapists that I have sent people to because I didn't have any space on my caseload. And the therapist told the staff, the only way you're going to stop getting traumatized is to quit your job, which was not helpful at all, because everybody doing this work does it because they really, really want to be in a role to help people the way they do. So if you have a therapist that says the only way you're going to stop your trauma is to quit your job, I would say don't do that. If you don't want to quit your job, find another therapist. Finding a therapist is building a relationship. So if you find someone and they're not a good fit, go to another one. It's perfectly okay. But yes, you could talk to your therapist about whatever it is that is bothering you, whether it's vicarious trauma, whether it's trauma, whatever it is. I mean, we go to school for this, and we have techniques that we learn to protect ourselves. So just let your therapist, potential therapist, know what it is that you're coming to therapy for, so they can be prepared, and then sit down with them and say what you need to say.
Yeah, and to add to that, we started first utilizing somebody, an MHP person, for our unit. We spoke to quite a few different people. It was more for myself and one of the other supervisors to try to identify a person that would best be able to handle us, because other therapists may not understand what you deal with every day, or when people get concerned of things that they should discuss. We actually had some MHP personnel who were very familiar with it, and that breaks down huge barriers when you're trying to communicate that to somebody, your concerns of what you shouldn't say, or what they're going to think of when you talk about what you have to do every day. And not everybody's conditioned for that. So it's really important to find the right person for yourself or for your group.
Absolutely. And I think I remember the same thing Carol has mentioned before, that if someone responds to you with, I can't believe you're doing this job, or I can't believe that you're going through this on a daily basis, well, that might be completely human and something that people can absolutely say. You don't look for that relationship with your therapist, right? You want somebody who understands what you're doing and can help you go through those struggles. So that's why I wanted to address that. That's a really difficult one for people, especially if the first one that they find kind of reacts that way. You get very much dissuaded, right? You don't feel like going around and looking for more people. So we encourage you to keep looking and to keep reaching out for help when you need it. And with that, our next slide has all of our contact information on it. Feel free to get in touch with us. We are here for you. If you have any questions about additional trainings, or you want to schedule a training for your team and we can help you with that, contact me. If you have any questions pertaining to the contact or you need help, you can go ahead and reach out to Kevin and Carol as well, who have now volunteered. So with that, I will hand it to Alicia. And again, thank you everyone for being here with us. And we hope to see you on the 23rd again with those two. So hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much for a great presentation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of praise and good questions in the chat. So just another shout out that we will be having a separate Q&A session for all of you, so we will be able to address your questions. Just a note here that you will be getting your certificate of attendance. This is an automated email from WebEx, so you'll get it within the next 24 hours. If you don't receive it, please check your spam, and then you can reach out to us at the NTAC Help Desk if you still didn't receive it and are having issues with that. If you would like to sign up for our NTAC listserv and receive more information about trainings, you can do so at this link here. And there is our contact information from the help desk. If you do have any questions, like I said, about your certificate or materials or past recordings, please let us know. Reach out to us at that email, and more information is at those links as well. We are also available to answer any technical assistance questions you may have. You can fill out a request here at OJJDP's TTA 360 portal. Just another note about past recordings. The first two recordings for this series are up and available on OJJDP's Multimedia page and YouTube channel. Those are publicly available, so please share as widely as you would like. Here are the next 3 events that are coming up in this series. We have our next one coming up on March 23rd, and there is information to register on this slide. Again, this information is available at the Google Drive link, which my colleague presented in the chat. It has all of the materials and all of the registration links moving forward. And here, coming up next week, we have a Preventing Youth Hate Crimes and Bullying Initiative webinar. And this one is an introduction for youth hate crimes and hate groups for juvenile justice professionals. On March 24th, we have another webinar in our PBS series, which is Raising the Bar on Juvenile Reentry, Ways Data Analysts use data. And that one is really open for anyone that might be in the juvenile justice field who wants to learn a little bit more about how professionals use the research that we're always engaging in. And then this is the last one in that data series, and this one is for young people and what they say they need. Again, anyone in the juvenile justice profession is welcome to sign up for that one. All right, here's just some connection information to stay abreast of what is going on with OJJDP. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.